Hey guys, it's Debbie. Welcome to my channel. I am so sorry that I'm late. We got a little behind on our recap of day 5 because I was in the hospital yesterday all day long because they screwed up on the schedule or something in the OR and there was an emergency surgery and I was first case, but I got bumped to last case, so I was on a stretcher for like 13 hours. So, anyway, we are back with day 6 of the attempted honor killing trial. And there were some goofs yesterday with names not getting redacted. And what else happened? Oh, some of the, I guess, security guards downstairs were watching it. And Court TV has dubbed this the attempted honor killing trial, and the jury's not supposed to know about the honor killing part. So, Court TV is doing this differently today. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to get to see everything. I don't know. I just don't know. And I don't, excuse me. I don't like it. I don't like it. Because the way it's set up looks like when they're doing their talking heads thing, where, well, you'll see. We'll be broadcasting our court TV live coverage, which I have no idea what that means. I thought they were doing their live coverage. What? Why are they showing the videos now? What's happening? No, are they showing the trial or what?
I'm gonna get them up.
What the fudge? I don't like this.
Kid, because they're all worked
I
out.
don't want to watch the body cam. I want to watch the trial. Oh my God. What is happening?
I gave him my word. I gave him my word. Yeah.
At the end of the day, where are those 6 kids?
Where inside the school?
Office.
Did you tell them anything when you got there?
Yes.
And what did you say when you walked in?
Complete loss of hearing during the episode.
Okay.
Of the deoxygenated blood and the impact from that.
When you got there?
Yes.
What did you say when you walked in? Okay.
And when somebody is, when strangulation occurs, could the can it be compromised?
Vein is a thin-walled vessel, so it's easy of the blood coming out of the head and down the neck and into the heart. So simple compression will stop.
Yeah, now there's nothing because StreamYard crashed. Is this testimony she just did, or is this live testimony? Now I'm mad now. Do we get to hear live stuff or what? I'm so mad right now.
I know this may sound like a silly question, but you indicated the head would be one of the parts of the body that would be mostly impacted. Be impacted in a positive way or a negative way?
A negative way.
Okay. And why is that?
The blockage of it coming out of the head causes a backup of pressure in the head, so the blood has no other way to get out except those jugular veins. So when pressure is placed on the jugular veins, that buildup of blood has nowhere to go and builds space in all structures of the head.
Okay. And you testify, Dr. Gilbert, that when there is pressure applied to the jugular veins, there's a buildup of the blood in the brain. The buildup of the blood you're referring to, would it be the deoxygenated blood?
Correct.
Okay. And when there is that buildup of deoxygenated blood in the brain, what are some physical symptoms that can manifest?
There's a higher blood pressure in the brain. There is accumulation of the byproducts that should be coming out of the brain, all of the carbon dioxide, the used up chemicals from brain cells, all that is trapped in the brain and it's the head without the ability to be cleansed and recirculated.
Okay. And when that happens, if a person has a buildup of deoxygenated blood in the brain, what are some symptoms that they may experience?
Many symptoms. They may get confusion. Their brain cells aren't going to think and react appropriately. They will get a headache because that increased pressure will cause pain in their brain. They may not be able to talk clearly or make sense out of what's going on. They get fuzzy. Eventually, they will lose consciousness because of that pressure on the jugular vein.
Okay. And why would the buildup of deoxygenated blood in the brain cause a headache?
Again, the deoxygenated blood, not enough oxygen for each of the cells to do their job, and the pressure of having that extra blood not going anywhere is what causes the headache.
Okay. And why would it cause dizziness?
Dizziness comes from, again, the center part of the brain, the brainstem area, gets dysfunctional, and the brainstem controls almost everything that goes on in our body, our heart rate and our blood pressure and our consciousness and so many things, hearing, speaking. So all of those things are impacted or affected with that buildup of pressure and deoxygenated blood.
Okay. And why would it cause dizziness?
Again, the dizziness comes from the dysfunction in the brain, that balance that comes from our brainstem area is impacted by the buildup of the blood and the lack of oxygen.
Okay. And you, Dr. Gilbert, when you testified about the different causes of the buildup of the deoxygenated blood and the impact from that, you used the word brainstem several times. What is brainstem?
So our brain has sections of it, hemispheres up here, but it all condenses into something we call the brainstem. And the brainstem is connecting the brain to the spinal cord, and it is giving all the information from the brain to the rest of the body. So the brain stem is like the powerhouse of the brain. And when we have strangulation, we're impacting blood flow coming out of the head and blood flow going into the head. And the biggest, it impacts everything in the head, but one of the biggest areas is that brainstem. That's that computer that runs the show. So alertness, awakeness, thinking possibilities, heart rate, blood pressure, the things that we don't think about our body doing are all controlled by the brainstem. And all of that control is dysfunctional or lost when we have pressure on the neck, causing that obstruction of blood flow.
Okay. And if I'm under,
And Dr. Gilbert, while she has been testifying, has been often using her hands to demonstrate for the jury what she is verbally explaining to them in her head and neck region.
thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And Dr. Gilbert, based on what you just described as the function of the brainstem, is it fair to say that in order for any person's brainstem to function properly, that they need, in essence, they need deoxygenated blood to be removed from the brain,
Correct.
and then also oxygenated blood to be traveling to the brain?
Correct.
Okay. And of the brain.
Listening to Dr. Gilbert testify there. We're going to squeeze in a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll have more coverage of this case out of Washington State when we return.
I hate this. I hate this.
Lost consciousness. Now, he and his wife, Zahraa, both face attempted murder charges.
Sort of the brainstem being impacted and impaired, can the buildup of deoxygenated blood in the brain also cause other complications?
Yes.
Okay, and what are some of those complications?
Again, every aspect of the brain is impacted by this backup of blood with the pressure and the lack of oxygen and the lack of nutrients. So our cortex, our thinking part of the brain is impacted. Our motor centers are impacted. Our ability to move in a concerted effort and make a point of what we want to do is impacted. And again, eventually, everything is impacted to the point of unconsciousness.
Okay. Dr. Gilbert, have you heard of the term cerebral hypoxia?
Yes.
And what is that?
Cerebral means brain. Hypoxia means lack of oxygen. So cerebral hypoxia is lack of oxygen to brain cells.
Okay. And is there also a relationship between muscle tone loss and jugular vein compression?
Yes.
And what is that? And how does jugular vein compression cause muscle tone loss?
Again, with the deoxygenated blood, so lack of oxygen, the muscle control center is in the center, the temporal part of our brain, and so we lose control over our ability to move any of our muscles in our body, arms, legs, all of the motor skills are diminished or lost with the pressure on the neck.
And what is, have you heard of the term asphyxia?
Yes.
And what is asphyxia?
Asphyxia is a term to describe lack of oxygen to a certain area of the body. The oxygen isn't getting to where it needs to be.
Okay. And you testified about the effect of the brain from the buildup of the oxygenated blood. Is the magnitude of the child versus grown adult?
That's a really interesting question because most of our research on strangulation has come through adult victims. We don't study children in the same way that we study adults, and children don't have that same ability to give us history and to tell us the symptoms that they had. Some of that, clearly not studying a child, is one of those things that we as a society feel really strongly about. We don't experiment on children. So when we are utilizing the literature and the information from adults and what they are able to tell us during a strangulation episode, we are also utilizing that information on our pediatric patients. The person we're talking about today is closer to adult than, say, a 6-year-old would be. So it's easier for me to say that the adult literature and the science that we know about strangulation will apply to her. And I might have had a more difficult time if I was talking about a 6-year-old strangulation child, simply because we don't have the same amount of science to talk succinctly and clearly about all the effects of strangulation on a child.
Okay. And when it comes to strangulation, Dr. Gilbert, how much pressure is needed for jugular vein occlusion?
Again, the jugular vein is like other veins in our body. It's a thin-walled vessel, and it requires 4.4 pounds of pressure to occlude the jugular vein.
And when you
hitting the pause button on this testimony so we can bring in criminal defense attorney Marie Ferreira to weigh in. And Marie, I mentioned earlier that we are monitoring our YouTube page. People are chiming in on this trial, watching with us. And there was an interesting question about if the parents are convicted in this case, would there be a no communication order with the children being placed? Would they not be able to have communication with all of their other children? What are your thoughts on that? In the attempted murder trial for
have blood flowing through that blood vessel.
Okay. And is it fair to say when the jugular vein occludes, it is, lack of a better way of describing it, is in essence the jugular vein is closed off?
Correct.
Okay. And when you say 4 pounds of pressure, what do you mean by that?
To put that in context, pressure is force. And the amount of force that it takes to close off the jugular vein is very small. It takes 6 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger of a well-oiled gun. It takes 20 pounds of pressure to open a can of peas with a flip top on it. A simple handshake between adults is between 60 and 80 pounds of pressure. So when I say 4 pounds of pressure, that's very little force to occlude or stop the blood flowing down the jugular vein.
Okay. And when you say the amount of pressure that it takes for an adult handshake, are you referring to, in essence, I describe it as a very firm grip handshake?
Actually, the very firm grip handshake is higher force.
Okay.
The science says that that's about 160 pounds of pressure. I'm talking about my handshake. My handshake as a female is about 60 to 80 pounds of pressure.
Okay. And you testified that jugular vein occlusion can sometimes result in loss of consciousness. How long does it take, based on your training experience, for jugular vein occlusion to result in loss of consciousness?
Again, according to the science that we have, it takes about a minute of occlusion of the jugular vein for a person to lose consciousness.
Okay. And then, Dr. Gilbert, are you familiar with the term petechia?
Yes.
And what is petechia?
Petechiae are the breakage of very tiny, small capillaries or blood vessels in our skin. Every cell in our skin is supplied with oxygen and nutrients by very, very, very tiny veins. And petechiae is a breakage of those veins that causes a red dot visible on the surface of the skin.
Okay. And can jugular vein occlusion cause petechia?
Yes.
And how does it cause petechia?
Again, it's the backup of blood without an area, without a way for that pressure of that blood to dissipate or go away. So when you have occlusion of the jugular veins, all of that blood that should be coming down from the head is backing up, and it backs up with pressure into those tiny little capillaries, those tiny little blood vessels in the skin. And so from the point of pressure upward is where you will see petechiae.
Okay.
Petechiae will be above the point of impact.
And for the record, you've been using your hands to demonstrate petechiae on the different parts of your head and your face.
Correct.
Okay. And besides petechia, well, let me ask you this question about petechia, Dr. Gilbert. When there is jugular vein occlusion, you testified it can cause petechia. Does it only occur in your eyes, or can it occur and appear on other parts of your body?
It can be anywhere above the point of occlusion. So we see petechia most commonly in the skin, in the lining of the eyes, so inside the eyelids, in the white of the eyes themselves. Petechia is a visible thing, but we can't look into the brain. If we do and we have a person deceased, there's petechiae all over the brain also. So it's the little tiny, tiny blood vessels that are rupturing, causing blood to leak out, and that can be anywhere in the head.
Okay. You testify that it can appear in the head, but also it can appear on the lining of your eyes. Can it also appear just on your face?
Yes.
Okay. And then based on your training experience, how long does jugular vein need to be occluded for petechia to be present?
Again, based on the science, it's about 20 to 30 seconds of occlusion to then break those blood vessels and cause petechiae.
Okay. And Dr. Gilbert, you testify that it takes about a minute to reach loss of consciousness from jugular vein occlusion. Let's say in a situation where external forces apply to the neck, such as from strangulation, and the jugular veins are occluded, and an individual loses consciousness. What comes after loss of consciousness if the pressure is not removed from the neck?
If that pressure continues, loss of consciousness can be followed by a seizure. It can be followed by loss of bowel and bladder control, and eventually it can be followed by brain death.
Okay. And when you talk about brain death, is that in essence when the person is also dead?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about it takes around 4 pounds of pressure to cause jugular vein occlusion. I want to ask you some questions about that. Between when a person loses consciousness to when they eventually when they have a seizure from jugular vein occlusion, the amount of pressure, does that need to change or can it stay the same?
It can stay the same, or
Okay.
it can change. Actually, it can be both. And with just jugular vein occlusion, you can have a seizure before you lose consciousness.
Okay. And then with regards to jugular vein occlusion and the approximate 4 pounds of pressure, you testified that after loss of consciousness, there could be the seizure, and then eventually there could be brain death.
Coming up, more testimony in the trial for parents Ihsan and Zahraa Ali. We're coming right back.
Heartbroken.
Okay. By what?
For what my dad did.
Okay. Did you have any fear?
Yes.
About what?
Blood pressure center, all of the things that are imperative for our body to be alive. Death by strangulation happens in a time frame very quickly. 3 to 4 minutes of occlusion can cause death. So it doesn't take very long to occlude those veins and arteries to then cause death.
Okay. And you testify that it takes approximately 3 to 4 minutes to reach brain death. Is that just from jugular vein occlusion itself?
That's a hard thing to say simply because when there's a strangulation event, typically there's occlusion of both the jugular vein and the carotid arteries. That's the arteries that are bringing the blood up to the brain. But occlusion of just jugular veins can result in death.
Okay. And so just want to make sure I understand your testimony that when external pressure is applied to the neck, the jugular vein will result in compression. Is that right?
Correct.
And then when jugular vein gets compressed, it can cause occlusion, which as it continues to be occluded, then loss of consciousness will occur.
Correct.
And then if once loss of consciousness happens and the pressure is not released, then the same amount of pressure can eventually cause brain death. Okay. And earlier when you testified about brainstem, you sort of described it as the powerhouse of the brain. Is it fair to say, if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, that a person's brain is somewhat, it can be compared to sort of like a computer?
That's the comparison we like to use. Yes.
Okay. And does the brainstem in the brain also sort of controls every aspect of our body?
It does.
And does it control how our body functions?
It does.
Okay. And with regards to let me ask you this question. With regards to the brainstem, when there is jugular vein occlusion and there is a disruption to the function of the brainstem, does it disrupt the function of the brainstem that controls all aspects of our body and how it functions, or can it just control certain aspects of our body?
The brainstem controls all of our non-thinking aspects of our body. So again, breathing, blood pressure, eyesight, just everything that we do without thinking about it, heart rate, all of those things are controlled by the brainstem. But the brainstem is the combination of all parts of the brain feeding into the brainstem, and gives the signals and the information to the body. So when there's damage in the brain, then that damage is interpreted by the brain stem. When there's damage to the brain stem, then we have serious complications. Our heart rate don't breathe on our own. We're breathing all the time without thinking about it. That's our brain stem. So when the brain stem is impacted or injured, all of the things that we take for granted are not happening.
Okay. And have you heard the term cerebral edema?
Yes.
And
So when there's occlusion or pressure on the jugular veins and all that extra blood is staying up in the head, it's causing intense pressure and swelling of the brain cells.
okay, and the intense pressure and the swelling of the brain cells.
Negative way. Every aspect of the brain is impacted by that excess pressure. And when we have excess pressure in the brain of an adult, or essentially anybody over the age of 2, we have no way to release that pressure. When you're under 2 years of age, all of your bones aren't glued together yet, and so the bones can expand and can absorb some of that pressure. But over the age of 2, our bones are glued together. So there's no way to let that pressure out. And so that's why all the brain cells get so impacted or damaged by that elevated blood pressure in the brain.
Okay. And can cerebral edema also result in brain death?
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
On about carotid arteries.
So the carotid arteries are the thick muscle-walled blood vessels that are coming straight out of the heart, the aorta, and the neck provide oxygenated blood and nutrients to the head and to the brain. The jugular veins on the outside, the carotid artery is on the inside, and then the windpipe, the trachea, is right in the middle. So the carotid arteries are protected by the jugular vein on the outside and the windpipe on the inside. Arteries, thick-walled, are very important to any part of our body to bring that oxygenated blood and all the nutrients that our cells need.
Her discussion of arteries and where they are located as she was testifying.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Dr. Gilbert, you testified that the carotid arteries are responsible for bringing oxygenated blood into all parts of our body. Does that include the brain?
The carotid arteries are bringing oxygenated blood to the brain. Arteries bring oxygenated blood to every part of the body. The carotid arteries specifically are their job.
And with regards to oxygenated blood, is it fair to say that oxygenated blood contains oxygen?
Correct.
And so therefore it needs to function properly.
So in addition to oxygen, there's many other nutrients, the glucose and all of the substrates that our cells need to be able to survive. All of that is carried through the artery.
Okay. And what internal pressure on the carotid arteries below to be compromised?
Again, if the pressure is occluding the carotid arteries, no oxygenated blood is coming up to the brain, so it's not providing the things, the substrates, the things that each glucose, no other nutrients, none of that is coming up from the heart and the lungs if there's occlusion of the carotid arteries.
Okay. And you testified earlier about some of the physical symptoms that a person can experience when there is a jugular vein occlusion. What about when there is carotid artery occlusion? What are some of the physical symptoms that a person can experience?
We're hitting the pause button on this testimony so we can get to a break. But first, let's bring in our guest for this hour. Still with us from Los Angeles, California, we have criminal defense attorney Marie Pereira. Marie, I want to ask you one of the questions that we got from our YouTube viewers who are chiming in terms of against the parent during this melee. And I do want to point out that count 4 against Ihsan Ali is a 4th-degree assault, a gross misdemeanor against the boyfriend. Your thoughts on what the parents of this boyfriend may have wanted to pursue following a fight like this?
I think seeing the father come on and just the fact that they looked after their son from the beginning when the mother allegedly tried to put hands on him at the school. And they went as far as to go to family court and get an order of protection in favor of their son against the mother. That was a lot. It showed that they're very caring parents. They're law-abiding people, because it would have been easy enough to say, lady, you know, stay away from my son and get bucky with them. But they didn't. They followed the law. Maybe if they had money, the young man's family could go after them civilly. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it stops right there. They're being charged. She violated an order of protection, and I think the charges reflect the damage that was done to the son. And I don't think the parents are going to go any further with it.
Marie, we had a question earlier, and I asked John Day about it on our last hour, talking about cultural experiences inside a courtroom. You're not from here. You come to the United States. Now you find yourself in the United States criminal justice system, and you're bringing different cultures to the table. Obviously, we want a fair and impartial jury system and court system. We have interpreters that we bring in if people don't understand the language. In this particular case, if we saw convictions here, could you bring that up in sentencing, talking about this is a situation where they are from a different country.
she was wrong
Culturally,
about
they
that,
have
wasn't
different
she?
traditions. He didn't like what his daughter was doing in regard to dating somebody when he had maybe set up somebody else for her to marry. Could you bring that up in sentencing for a mitigating factor?
Absolutely. If they are convicted, I think bringing in someone, an expert, to explain that there was really no intent to murder, even though there was a conviction, you have to understand their culture and what is discipline to them and what laws direct
What? He
parental
was
discipline
absolutely trying
in
to
that
kill her.
region. But at the end of the day, we're here in America. And if you're here in America, you have to follow the rules based on American standards. And in America, we frown upon extreme corporal punishment. And that would include going to your daughter's school and grabbing her, allegedly beating up her boyfriend, jumping on top of her and trying to squeeze the oxygen from her body. Even if he did it maybe not intentionally, when you put your hands on a 5'1", 100-pound girl, you expect there could be injuries. So I don't think that it's going to get the dad and the mom out of the situation, because you're here in America, you follow laws of America. But yes, to answer your question, bringing in someone to explain the cultural mores and differences could be a mitigator in the situation to minimize the intent
If they
level.
wanted
We'll
her to
certainly see how it
marry,
plays out still in the guilt.
if they wanted her to marry, do the arranged marriage thing and punish her for not doing the arranged marriage, then they should have stayed in Iraq or wherever they're from. Because when you go to another country, you abide by that country's laws. You don't get to use both. No, this is the way we do it in our country. You're not in your country anymore. You don't get to use that as an excuse. You just don't. That's not the way the world works. When you move to another country, you have to abide by the other country's rules. And if that's your culture, then stay where your culture is legal. I'm sorry. I mean, it sounds harsh, but you can't. I mean, I know that America is the melting pot and that we have so many different cultures in our communities, and that's fine. But when it comes to something like this, you can't do it. You just can't. I know some of their commentators are, I don't like talking heads. I just don't. And I'm very upset that this has happened.
Phase at this point haven't moved to the penalty phase yet, but stand by. We're going to get in our break. When we come back, we have more of a witness from
Technology, eventually with compression of the artery, they will faint and they may stop breathing.
My incisions.
And with regards
That's a good
to, you testified with regards to jugular vein occlusion, the impact on the brain is due to the dysfunction of the brainstem. With regards to carotid artery occlusion, is it the same idea behind it?
The carotid artery occlusion actually is much more global.
And I don't understand why that was excluded. Because that's, I don't know why. Do they think because it's more prejudicial than probative? I guess. I mean, I guess that's the main reason why they exclude things, right? But that is the motive. But now I guess they're saying the motive is, well, she ran away. People don't kill their kid because they ran away. It doesn't make any sense.
Global because the artery is bringing the nutrients to every single cell in the brain. And so, again, in a strangulation episode, it's hard to differentiate because generally when you're being strangled, you're going to have occlusion of both the jugular vein and the carotid artery. But the carotid artery has more impact in every aspect of the brain because every single cell in the brain needs the oxygen and the nutrients.
Okay. And what are some complications that can occur from lack of oxygenated blood traveling to the brain?
Again, loss of consciousness, inability to control movements, seizures, eventually brain death will occur because every single cell is lacking the oxygen and the nutrients that they need.
Okay. And have you heard of the term carotid sinus?
Yes.
And what is that?
The carotid sinus is a tiny little powerhouse in the carotid artery. We can't actually see it. It's not something that you see like on an x-ray or a picture. It's a nerve cell area right inside the carotid artery. And the carotid sinus helps control heart rate and blood pressure to a maximum amount. So for instance, if your blood pressure falls just a tiny bit, your carotid sinus tells your brain, again, comparison to a computer, tells your brain, well, we got to fix the blood vessels throughout the body and fix the heart rate to fix the blood pressure. It is a minute control center for heart rate and blood pressure.
Okay. And when there is pressure applied to the carotid artery, say from strangulation, can the carotid sinus be impacted?
Oh, yes.
And how does that get impacted?
So we have something called a carotid sinus reflex. When there's pressure on the carotid sinus and the blood pressure falls and the heart rate falls, then the brain immediately tries to correct that. And it tries to increase blood pressure and increase heart rate. Of course, with occlusion of the carotid arteries, that process is thwarted. It doesn't work well. But that's what the carotid sinus is meant to do. When there's any pressure there at all, then its job is to fix the blood pressure and the heart rate for the body.
Okay. And if the blood pressure and the heart rate for the body goes down, and let's say in that situation, and the carotid sinus cannot sort of speak to the brain, so to speak, what ends up happening to the heart?
So again, with a low heart rate and a low blood pressure, eventually death.
Okay. And Dr. you testified earlier about the compression of jugular veins can cause muscle tone loss due to that.
Correct.
And if there is muscle tone loss from the compression of the jugular veins, what, if any, effect will that have on the pressure of the artery?
I'm not understanding the question.
Okay. I will go back to that question in a moment. With regards to the amount of pressure for carotid artery occlusion.
So remember, jugular vein occlusion is 4 pounds. Carotid artery occlusion is 11 pounds. Examples I gave you of what we need pressure for.
Okay. And with regards to carotid artery occlusion, you testified that it can result in loss of consciousness. How long does it take for loss of consciousness to occur?
Again, this is much quicker than with the jugular vein. Loss of consciousness with carotid artery occlusion will be within 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay. Once loss of consciousness of the pressure, to cause carotid artery occlusion, and you testified that within 20 to 30 seconds it can cause loss of consciousness, and then you testify that after that it will result in death. The pressure is not released. And what are the same amount of pressure?
Just the sustained pressure, same amount of pressure sustained.
And then how does carotid artery occlusion, how can that result in death?
Again, lack of blood flow into the brain, lack of oxygen to every single brain. Importantly, of course, our heart rate, our respiratory rate, and our blood pressure are the three big things that are impacted that will eventually lead to death.
Okay. And approximately how long does it take to reach death from carotid artery occlusion?
Again, the science says 1 to 3 minutes for carotid artery occlusion to lead to death.
Okay. We talked about the definition of strangulation is when there's external pressure that compromises blood flow and airflow. I want to ask you some questions about compromise of airflow. How does strangulation, the external pressure on the neck, how can it impact or affect airflow?
So our trachea is our windpipe. It's in the center of our neck. The trachea comes from the back of the mouth. So we breathe in through our nose and our mouth, and the air goes in through our vocal cords, where our voice, our trachea connects to the lungs, and all of the it's like a superhighway. All of the tubing that comes off of the trachea sends oxygenated blood to every air sac in our lungs. Then when the air is exchanged, the carbon dioxide, the bad air, comes back up through the trachea and we breathe it out. We don't think about this, we just do this. Breath in through the trachea, everything exchanged in the lungs. Breath out through the trachea, all the bad stuff goes away.
Okay. And for the record,
Jurors are certainly getting a lesson on how the body works. Really there inside of the courtroom. We do have to get to a break. Before we do that, though, we'd like to welcome in our viewers who are joining us from our YouTube channel today. We'll be monitoring that page live throughout the day, so you can join in the chat, send us your questions, and we will answer some of them live on air. That's youtube.com/courttv. We'll be back with more after this. Stay with us.
With regards to and which part of the human body is affected when there isn't enough airflow?
Well, everything's impacted, but immediately the impact is in the lungs. When there's occlusion of the trachea, air isn't getting in to the lungs, air isn't getting out of the lungs.
Okay, and this might sound like a silly question, but does a person's lungs need air to function?
Yes.
Okay. And when airflow is impacted, say from strangulation, what are the symptoms that can manifest?
Our body is so amazing. There is immediate panic when there is occlusion of the trachea because our body wants oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. So the first response with any pressure to the trachea is panic and try to breathe. The patient, the person who is being strangled, is fighting and working and trying to take in deep breaths. And with occlusion of the trachea, no air is going in or out. So the air that was in the lungs is trapped, and the air that wants to come in is not able to pass through that obstruction.
Okay. And you testify that with regards to the function of the trachea, in essence, I believe your testimony is air goes in and the air comes out in the form of carbon dioxide. Is that right?
Correct.
And what happens when there is occlusion to the trachea or airflow is impacted and carbon dioxide does not come out and it stays in our body, let's say in our lungs? What, if any, effect can that have?
So again, the carbon dioxide is the bad air, the toxic substances that come from the cells doing their job every day. It makes carbon dioxide. So if that is staying in the lungs, there's a number of things that happen. The carbon dioxide is building up in the body, so all of the cells in the body are impacted by that. But also the pressure of having the air trapped in the lungs can cause the air sacs, the tiny, tiny little air sacs in your lungs to rupture because that pressure is building up as the carbon dioxide is being trapped in there.
Okay. And what about the spinal cord? Can strangulation have any impact on the spinal cord?
Yes, it can.
And how can it impact the spinal cord?
Again, depending on the method of strangulation, the spinal cord is in the neck. It's in the back part of the neck. So everything we were just talking about is up front. The jugular vein, the carotid artery, and the trachea. The spinal cord is in the back. But with the right amount of force or the right hold for strangulation, there can also be damage to the cervical neck bones, and those cervical neck bones are protecting the spinal cord.
Okay. And Dr. Gilbert, do you know someone by the name of Fatima Ali?
I do.
And how do you know Fatima?
So as my job in the hospital, as a pediatric-based hospital medicine doctor, I was on service on the Saturday that Fatima was a patient in our pediatric floor.
Okay. And you indicated on the Saturday that Fatima was a patient on the pediatric floor. Would that have been October 19th?
That's correct. That's the date that I would have worked. I work Saturdays for a 24-hour shift consistently. And so my Saturday was that October 19th, and Fatima was a patient.
Okay. And you indicated on Saturdays it's your day to work. It's your day to work a 24-hour shift. What do you mean by 24-hour shift?
Our shifts start at 7 o'clock in the morning. Some of my team, there's 6 of us, some of us work just a day shift or a night shift, and some of us work the day and night together. So when we work a 24-hour shift, we work from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock the next morning.
Okay.
Well, they stopped that in Florida.
And were you one of her treating physicians while Fatima was at the admitted to the pediatric floor at Providence?
Yes.
And are you familiar with a doctor named Dr. Jamie Murphy?
Yes.
And how do you know Dr. Murphy?
Dr. Murphy is one of our 6 pediatric hospital-based doctors. She was the doctor working the night shift on Friday, October 18th, when Fatima was admitted. She was the admitting doctor. In other words, the emergency room had taken care of Fatima and determined that she needed to stay in the hospital for ongoing observation. So the emergency room doctor contacted Dr. Murphy to admit her to the pediatric floor.
Okay. And are you familiar with a doctor by the name of Dr. Parliament?
Yes.
And how do you know Dr. Parliament?
Dr. Parliament is also one of our 6 pediatric hospital-based physicians. He is actually our lead or our boss over the 6 of us. We're all employed by Seattle Children's Hospital. Dr. Parliament also was a doctor that took care of Fatima during her hospital stay.
Okay. And based on your training experience, when you are a doctor that is also a treating physician for a patient, do you document your observations or what you did as far as it relates to that patient in what's essence called chart notes?
Yes.
And are chart notes contained in a patient's medical records?
Yes.
Okay. And as one of Fatima's treating physicians, would you be able to review her chart notes?
Correct. Yes.
And do you have the ability to review her chart notes before you started your 24-hour shift?
The way we do it, we do what we call sign out from 7 o'clock to 7:30, and we get a brief report from the person going off shift as to who the patients are and what's going on. Typically, we don't know what's going on before our shift starts. And so after 7:30, we then do a complete chart review on each of the patients that was just signed out to us. So that's when I would...
Hitting the pause button and bringing back in criminal defense attorney Marie Pereira. Marie, we are getting close to the state resting their case in chief, likely tomorrow. How should they end their case?
You know, based on primacy and recency, if she is one of the last people that the jurors are going to hear, I want to push back on myself when I said, you know, they're doing too much cumulative. I think they're explaining what could have happened based on the force that he exerted on the daughter while he was on top of her. That she could have died, she could have had organ failure, she could have been paralyzed. That anything that
Oh, today I'm going to go look at Joe Blow's chart and do it without a reason.
Okay. And with regards to Fatima, was there follow-up evaluation or care that was provided to her at Providence Abuse Intervention Center, in which you're a medical director of?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And Dr. Gilbert, based on your training experience with strangulation, can strangulation also cause a seizure?
Yes.
Okay, and what is a seizure?
A seizure is abnormal muscle movements, and it comes from, again, the motor part, the central part of the brain. If there's a lack of oxygen to the motor part of the brain, then the message from the brain to the muscles is a spasmodic seizure. And generally that looks like one part of the body or the entire body shaking uncontrollably. When somebody's having a seizure, you can't stop it by holding the muscle. When somebody's just trembling, if you hold their muscle, you'll stop the trembling. But when somebody's having a seizure, that excess muscle movement is coming from the brain, and it occurs because lack of oxygen. There are actually many other reasons also to have a seizure. Sometimes children have a seizure from a fever. Sometimes somebody gets brain cancer and they have a seizure because the cancer is doing abnormal things. But when we're talking specifically about suffocation, the seizure is coming from lack of oxygen to the motor part of the brain. And whichever part of the motor part of the brain is impacted will define whether an arm has a seizure or a leg has a seizure or the whole body has a seizure.
Okay. And based on your training experience, you indicated the lack of oxygen going to the brain can result in a seizure, and you also testified depending on which part of your body is impacted. Is it your testimony that when the lack of oxygenated blood, when oxygenated blood is not traveling to the brain, that it could be a situation where only a certain body part is impacted that results in a seizure?
A certain part of the brain may be more impacted that results in a seizure, yes.
Okay. And Dr. Gilbert, based on your training experience as a pediatrician and then also as a pediatrician with the subspecialty of child abuse, have you ever seen any of your patients that have had a seizure? Okay. And during your involvement with this case, during the course of your involvement with this case, were you at some point made aware that there was a video taken by a student capturing the incident at the bus stop in front of Timberline High School? And prior to your testimony today, did you have a chance to review that video?
All right, talking about reviewing some of the video. We're working in criminal defense attorney Marie Ferrer. Marie, I want to ask, some people are writing, they slow the video down. They really want people to be able to see exactly what the father was doing to Fatima. Talk about that.
It's very important because we're talking about a specific intent crime. So they want to show, based on what this expert is saying, what could have happened when you have impeding the oxygen flow to someone's body. And then now they're connecting the video to see exactly what was hard. It's all circumstantial to show he showed up at the school, he laid hands on her, and then he proceeded to try to choke her. So if they could slow it down, it would give the jurors a better idea through the chaos who was doing what. It's very important because it's what he physically did to her that is against the law and caused her to suffer the damages that she did, even though she.
All right, Marie, I think we have lost your feed. The question I was going to have for us, so I'll pitch it to Kelly, is about the mother. We're hearing from our viewers who are on YouTube, and they are talking about whether or not the impact on the neck by the mother, which we don't have on video, if that still means attempted murder for her, because we have had eyewitnesses to come in and say that she touched the mother's neck, or the mother touched her daughter's neck, that she may have tried to stop her from getting away from the father, but we don't have that on video.
Well, right, and there has been testimony to indicate that maybe the mother was trying to help. Fatima even had said, you know, maybe my mom was trying to help. So, I mean, the case definitely is stronger from a prosecutorial standpoint against the father than the mother.
Yeah, we'll see what the jury does with this one. Our thanks this afternoon. On the other side, they're going to queue up that video.
I think we're caught up to live. We are. Well, this sucks. Oh my God. This sucks, y'all. I'm sorry. It's not my fault. I don't know what else to do. Man. I need to fire that cameraman that caused this. And whoever was supposed to bleep out the names. Because I understand the rules, but the kids have been shown on court TV. The names have not been bleeped out. So we all know their names. We've seen the video. It's all out there. The cat's out of the. As EDB says, you can't put the poop back in the horse.
What are you thinking during this period of time?
Heartbroken.
Okay. By what?
For what my dad did.
Okay. Did you have any fear?
Yes.
About what?
Of dying.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Thank you for following along with us. I'm Julia Janae. We are in Washington State this hour, where testimony is underway in the attempted murder trial for two parents, Ihsan Ali and Zahraa Ali. Now, prosecutors in this case, they are expected to rest their case tomorrow. They say these two parents attacked their daughter at a school bus stop last year. It's an incident that was caught on camera, not only by bus surveillance video, but also cell phone video from bystanders. And it appears to show this father choking the 17-year-old daughter while other students jump in to try and save her. Ultimately, the bus driver, you see him there in orange, getting involved. Now, the victim, Fatima, she told the jury that she did run away from home that day because she felt her parents were trying to separate her from her boyfriend and move to Iraq. They did not approve of the relationship. On the stand now is a pediatrician, Dr. Joyce Gilbert. She's about to explain the analysis, her analysis of the chaotic cell phone video that was taken by a student eyewitness. And we're not going to be able to show you what's inside of the courtroom being shown to these jurors, but we do have our own version, which has blurring to protect the identity of the minors in that video. Let's go in for more.
Now I'm stopping the video at 0019 seconds. Dr. Gilbert, earlier, right before I paused the video, we see an individual that is lying on the ground with their left arm extended. Did you see that?
I did.
And when you observed, based on your training experience, the movement of that left arm, what did that appear was happening to that person?
That looked like a seizure of the left arm.
Okay, and what about the movement of the left arm makes you say that it looked like a seizure?
It was rhythmic, sustained rhythmic movement without a purpose. So the muscles of that left arm kept contracting and relaxing, contracting and relaxing, but she wasn't conscious at this point in time, and she wasn't trying to do something with that arm. So it's that rhythmic motion without purpose that appears to be a seizure.
And with regards to when a patient has a seizure, after a situation where they have a seizure and CT scans or x-rays are done on their brain, are you able to, just based on the review of the scans or the x-ray, tell that they in fact had a seizure?
No, the cellular damage at the cellular level, we can't see that on CT scans or angiograms or any of our imaging. So we can't tell that there was brain damage in that one area unless there was something much greater, such as a stroke or something that would show up on a CT scan. But you can't define a seizure based on a CT scan.
Okay. And with regards to, you indicated that if it was something greater, such as a stroke, that can cause it, that you can view it. If a stroke caused a seizure, you can view it on the CT scan. When in that situation, when you're reviewing the CT scan or the CT angiogram scans, is it the seizure itself that you can see, or is it the stroke or what's causing the stroke that you can see on the scans?
That's correct. You see an abnormality in a certain part of the brain. A stroke is a lack of oxygen for some reason to a certain part of the brain, and that lack of oxygen can cause cell death in that part of the brain. But what you see is the evidence of the stroke. So you might see a ruptured blood vessel or an occlusion of a blood vessel in the brain on the CT scan, and it might correlate correlate with the part of the brain that could have given that person a seizure.
Okay. And as part of being one of the treating physicians for Fatima while she was admitted at Providence St. Peter's Hospital, did you also review the exam that was conducted by the forensic nurse examiner, Synovia Rivas?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And on that exam, were you aware of the portion that documented some of the questions that was asked Fatima, such as whether she had a headache or whether she had a sore throat?
Yes.
And did you in fact review what her responses were?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And based on your training experience, Dr. Gilbert, the exam, when Ms. Rivas did the exam, there was the indication of Fatima indicated she had headaches. What is the relationship between a strangulation and headache?
Again, the headache is typically caused by the backup pressure from occlusion of the jugular vein, and that excess amount of blood in the head will cause the headache.
Okay. And we also heard that there was also the feeling of dizzy or lightheadedness. Is the relationship between strangulation and feeling dizzy or lightheadedness also what you described earlier with regards to the combination of the buildup of deoxygenated blood and or the lack of oxygenated blood traveling to the brain?
That's correct.
Okay. And we also heard testimony there was loss of consciousness. Is that also due to what you described earlier from that it could be one of the effects of strangulation due to lack of airflow or lack of oxygenated blood traveling to the brain or buildup of deoxygenated blood?
Correct.
Okay. And we also heard testimony about memory loss. Is that also the relationship between strangulation and memory loss? Is that also caused by what you described earlier?
Yes, our memory is laid down in a small little area of our brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is right in the center of the brain. When there is lack of oxygen to the brain, the hippocampus shuts down. So we can't put down memory for a situation that's happening when we have a lack of oxygen because of that situation. So it's very, very common for strangulation victims to have altered memory or sometimes even no memory of the event itself.
Okay. And what about weakness or numbness? We heard from Ms. Rivas that Fatima also indicated she had weakness and numbness. What is the causal relationship between strangulation and that?
Again, the lack of oxygen to the motor center of the brain will cause the weakness and the loss of motor control.
Okay. We also heard there was vision changes for Fatima. The causal relationship between strangulation and vision changes, is it the causal relationship, is it based on what you testified to earlier?
Yes, the lack of oxygen and the buildup of the pressure will affect the vision center of the brain, which is the back of the brain.
Okay. And what about ringing in ears? We heard that she also she also felt ringing in her ears. What is the causal relationship between strangulation and that?
Again, this is another brainstem function. Our hearing is directly related to the brainstem cells. So when there's damage to those brainstem cells from the occlusion of the artery, the vein, and the trachea, ringing in the ears is a very common symptom.
Okay. And what about sore throat? What is the relationship between strangulation and sore throat?
So the trachea is the big windpipe right in front of the esophagus, which is our swallowing tube to our stomach. And right in that area is our vocal cords. And we actually have sensation in our mouth and the top part of our throat. And then we don't have the same kind of sensory nerves once we get past the airway. Sore throat comes from, again, the pressure of the strangulation, and in the part of the throat where we have sensation is where we experience that sore throat symptom. We have a hoarse voice or a crackly voice, difficulty swallowing, and sore throat symptoms are very common after strangulation.
Okay.
And Dr. Gilbert was using her hands as she was describing that portion of her neck and throat.
Thank you, Your Honor. And we also heard there was difficulty or pain with swallowing. What is the causal relationship between external pressure to the neck and pain or swallowing?
And again, where our mouth goes into the throat region and we're swallowing saliva or food, there is still sensation there. So that pressure causes that discomfort. Swelling can also occur, causing discomfort for swallowing.
Okay. And when you're talking about the pressure that can cause the discomfort, are you referring to pressure to the trachea or pressure to the jugular veins or carotid arteries?
The position of the pressure is on the trachea, but it's giving pressure to the esophagus and the throat, which is right behind the trachea.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think you did.
And then what about hyperventilation? What is hyperventilation?
Hyper means increase, ventilation means breathing. So it's an increased rate of breathing.
Okay, and we heard that Fatima during the strangulation exam also indicated she had hyperventilation. What is the causal relationship between strangulation and hyperventilation?
So when you're strangled, when your airway is occluded, your immediate response is to try to breathe. It's a very primal instinct to stay alive and try to breathe. Fatima did this, and she described to us that she felt that it was hard to breathe and she couldn't catch her breath during this episode before she became unconscious. Once she woke up, the brain is on overdrive, telling her to continue to breathe and continue to breathe. And the hyperventilation comes from the strangulation episode, as well as from the anxiety that goes along with having your airway occluded. So even by the time she got to the hospital, she was still working hard at breathing. She was still afraid that it was not going to work well for her because of that strangulation effect. Gradually, over the time in the emergency room, her hyperventilation symptoms diminished. By the time she got to the pediatric floor, she no longer had that sensation or those symptoms.
Okay. And we also heard testimony that there were, well, let me ask you this question. Can strangulation cause abrasions on the human body?
Yes.
And what are abrasions?
Abrasions are breakage in the skin, the superficial skin, causing redness or marks or scratches, or even sometimes true lacerations. So any force applied to the skin can cause an abrasion.
Okay. And how can strangulation cause abrasion?
The amount of force in the episode of strangulation around the neck, sometimes on the face or the chest, all depending on where the pressure is being applied during that episode, will cause damage to the superficial skin.
Okay. And based on your training experience with strangulation, can the individual that is, in essence, being strangled, can they also cause the abrasion to occur?
Yes. In the process of trying to breathe during strangulation, sometimes the victim themselves will put their hands up by their neck or will move in a way that causes or increases the amount of abrasions seen.
Okay. Your Honor, I think this may be a good stopping point for the morning break.
You still have a ways to go with this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So, members of the jury, we're going to go ahead and take our morning recess at this time. Thank you very much, of course, for your time.
Court is dismissed for the moment there inside of that Washington State courtroom. So we'll take a break of our own, and that doctor will be back on the stand to break down more of what she saw, that video of the arm of the victim. Something I hadn't noticed before, and I guarantee the jurors hadn't noticed it either. Before we take our break, though, a quick programming note and another case, a huge one that is highly anticipated, happening this week. Court TV is going to be live in Idaho for the Brian Kohberger sentencing. It starts tomorrow. Crime and Justice correspondent Matt Johnson will be there reporting in Boise, along with Court TV anchor Ted Rollins. He is on the ground there. Sentencing begins at 11 a.m. Eastern. You are not going to want to miss what happens inside and outside of that courtroom. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tonight, on closing arguments, we're live from Boise ahead of tomorrow's sentencing in the Idaho student murders case. Plus, two parents stand trial for trying to allegedly kill their own daughter.
Closing arguments tonight at 8.
Why don't they usually go to 3? Well, wait. Because because their noon is our 3, well, my 3. They're taking their break early today. Or is it just all screwed up because of... I'm so confused. Yeah, different time zone, but usually they go to lunch at their noon, which is my 3. But it's only a quarter after 2. They're going to lunch at 11:15? What? What? Wiggles, that doesn't make sense. It's 11:15 there. Why are they going to lunch early? I don't know. Okay, well... Hey, pretty girl. I gotta take Belle to the vet in an hour. So... I'm so upset. I don't like this. You think maybe it'll go back to regular tomorrow? I hope. Well, at any rate, when we do the afternoon session in the morning, it's still going to be like this. I feel like we're missing so much. Because, like, I don't know if we're getting all the doctor's testimony or not. I want to go back and look at her arm, though. Did it show the video where her arm was, like, spasming or whatever? Seizing?
I'm stopping the video at 0019 seconds. Dr. Gilbert, earlier, right before I pause the video, we see an individual that is lying on the ground with their left arm extended. Did you see that?
I did.
And when you observed, based on your
yeah.
training experience, the movement of that left arm, what did that appear was happening to that person?
That looked like a seizure of the left arm.
Oh, you
Okay,
can't
and
really see
what
it.
about the movement?
You can't really see it. All you see is like legs around it, people standing around them. I mean, you can kind of see it flopping. I can't tell if it's a seizure or just her flopping her arm around. Man, I hate this. See, this has never happened before, guys, with me. And, the people that have been with me since the beginning, you know this. That I don't like to stream when it's like, I mean, I've done some hearings when it's like this. Um, but like not a whole trial. I've never done a trial like this. I've done, when we couldn't get like a whole hearing about somebody. I think I did a Brian Walsh hearing like this. And I fast forwarded through the talking heads like I did today and just did the parts of the hearing that they covered. But not for a trial. And if and the state's not even done yet. If the whole rest of the trial is gonna be like this, man, this is gonna suck. Jeez. Well, maybe Court TV will fix it and beg the judge get back in her good graces or something, and it'll. I don't know. Man, this is awful. I'm still gonna cover it though. Unless you guys decide you don't want to watch it like this. But I'm invested now. I've got to finish this because I want them to get what they got coming to them, because you should not treat your kids this way. This is horrible. And it's medieval. I mean, arranged marriages are just wrong. Rick throwing case. What case is that? You got major typos today, Flash. Rock throwing. What rock throwing case? I don't remember a rock throwing case. Colorado case. We just did a Colorado case, didn't we? The Megan, what's her face? Megan Jackson. Wasn't that Colorado? The coroner affair trial. I don't remember a rock throwing case though. Oh, South Carolina. Yeah, I don't remember that. Okay, guys. Well, I'm gonna go. I have to try to catch some urine from Belle to take to the vet. Yay. Why are you staring at me, Belle? You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that. Okay, guys. Remember, be kind to people, love your family, and Jesus loves you, and so do I. Bye, guys. I will see you in the morning, and we'll figure this mess out. Or tolerate it. Bye, guys. Love y'all. Have a great day.